Hi, welcome to Tune In Tuesday with Cicerone Press. I'm Hannah Stevenson, and it's really nice to see so many of you here. My colleague Amy Hodkin will be talking to our guest Paddy Dillon, and I'll pass over to her soon. But I'm going to be taking care of questions. So please, if you have any, send questions in on Facebook, Twitter, email, or through Zoom, whatever you prefer. If you aren't watching it live, don't worry, you'll be able to watch it on YouTube or Facebook or on our website at a later date. You can also find out more about our future live events on our website and on our Facebook page, or in our Facebook group. If you haven't joined that, it's called Cicerone Connect. Okay, so our guest this week is one of our most prolific authors. Paddy Dillon has written over 90 guidebooks and walked and trekked all over the world, including all the national trails, I think a couple of times. He's done all sorts of books for us, including the Southwest Coast Path, the Great Glen Way, loads and loads of books to islands like the Canary Islands and the Azores, Iceland, all sorts. He's also the president of the Backpackers Club, and as you will soon find out, a seasoned professional in packing light, and that's going to be our focus for this chat. Anyway, I will pass you over to Amy and she will start the interview.
Thanks, Hannah. That was brilliant. Yes, welcome, Paddy.
Hello there.
Yeah, really looking forward to talking to you about, I mean, it'd be so hard, wouldn't it, to talk to you about your whole career.
Well, don't go there.
So we thought we'd focus on backpacking and packing light and camping because, and primarily in the UK as well, because you have trekked all over the world, but we thought that given that trekking in the UK and, you know, we're not going to be able to travel that far this summer, so we thought we'd focus on that.
It's the safest option, yeah.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, it's likely that most people will be holidaying on home soil this year, and we'll get into the kind of nitty gritty about backpacking equipment and camping and that sort of thing. But first of all, I just wanted to ask, what is it about backpacking that you clearly love so much?
Well, I guess it's the difference between just going out for a day's walk, in which case you'll probably be driving or going by train or bus. You'll spend hours in a vehicle as well as hours on the hills or in the countryside. With backpacking, you go out, you stay out, you're more a part of the countryside, you're more involved in the terrain, because it's not just going there in daylight hours, but it's working through those nighttime hours as well. You know, you put your tent up, everything goes dark, you go to sleep. Should there be a howling gale in the night, you're the one who has to sort it out. No one else is going to come and deal with it for you. And it really does give you that proper connection with the landscape that you're passing through. But the thing is, you wake up, you're still on the trail, you're still in the area, you keep going through the day, and you'll end up somewhere else. And it's that great variety of, you know, you're not doing a circular walk back to your car. You're actually walking away and further away to wherever you're heading, and only at the end do you need to come back home. And I think that's what makes it different than any other type of walking. You're out there for a reason, and you stay out there, and you look after yourself while you're out there too.
Yeah, that idea of kind of self-sufficiency, I think, is really wonderful. And that sense of, you know, traveling quite long distances and covering ground in a way that, you know, we maybe don't do anymore because we're so used to traveling by car. You know, if you think like how short a time you can get somewhere by car, and then to trek it takes a couple of weeks. So yeah, that's really brilliant. You mentioned overnight and camping and that sort of thing. So is there a particular experience that you've had? You know, I'm sure you've had many, but one that stands out as particularly wonderful overnight experience?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you can't beat turning up in a place when it's actually getting dark, it's cloudy, you know where you are, it's just you can't see anything. You pitch the tent, you cook your meal, you turn in for the night, and in the morning you unzip the fly sheet, pop your head out, and for the first time realise where you've been staying. And it might be snow-capped peaks all around, you know, wonderful colours, which you didn't get the night you arrived, but it's been there, it's just been out of sight. I love that sort of thing, but I'm just as happy to be there on a nice calm evening, watch the sun go down, you know, quietly turn in, and then get up in the morning, watch the sun come up. You don't know what sort of weather you're going to get, so you don't know what the experience is going to be until it happens. You can check the weather forecast. That doesn't mean it's really going to happen the way they say, but it's just that thing, you're out there and no two mornings or evenings are going to be the same. And sometimes it could be a howling gale and pour with rain all night, and you're basically dreading setting off the next morning, but it all packs in at 5 o'clock, and by 6 o'clock the sun is up, you know, and you can't beat that sort of experience. But you're not going to get that experience if you're down in a posh hotel somewhere tucked into a nice cozy hostel, you know. That will all ride over your head. So it's that thing again, it's because you're out there and you're involved in the landscape, and you know, you're part of the terrain, if you like. It's just you and a thin sheet of fabric against whatever the world is going to throw at you.
And particularly in the UK as well, with how changeable the weather can be. You know, I'm sure you found that on maybe on coastal routes more than others.
It depends on the coast, because if you're on the east coast, there's always that danger that in the morning the mist is going to roll in and it won't burn off until 11 o'clock. So you don't see anything in the morning. You're packing up a damp tent, and you know, you've got to wait till noon to be able to shake off the condensation and hang it on a fence to dry. Not so much on the east coast, on the west coast. What you're more likely to get on the west coast is you're looking out at how wonderful the sea looks, and then you see a great smudge on the horizon and it's coming your way. But the thing about west coast walking is you can see what's coming your way. You can usually dress 5 minutes before it arrives, and you'll be the first to know when it's past, because the sun will be straight onto you and you'll see that grey smudge moving inland. Yeah, I mean, coastal walking, you can see a lot more than if you say in a valley where something might suddenly come over the tops, you know, a great thunderstorm or something, catch you totally unaware on a lovely sunny day. But yeah, if you're out there and, you know, you've got all your kit with you, you can ride out almost anything. You know, if the weather does turn nasty and you said, you know, I don't want to walk through this, well, put the tent up and have a lie down. You know, it doesn't matter if it's the middle of the day. Who said you have to camp at night? You know, camp in the middle of the day for an hour, let the storm pass, and then keep going.
Oh, that's brilliant advice. You're an expert, I suppose, in packing light. You mentioned kit there. Yes. Yeah. So, you know, you've mentioned having all the right kit, and I wondered if you could run us through a kind of kit list. Take with you.
If you'd seen me when I was 16 on my first backpack, the gear I was carrying, I was bow-legged with the weight of it. I was bent double with the weight of it. When I took the pack off and it crashed to the ground, I swear the ground shook. And that was at the tender age of 16. Ever since then, I've been trying to adapt and refine and, you know, get something that is more and more comfortable to carry. I mean, the bottom line would be, I'd be quite happy if I wasn't carrying anything. But if I'm going to do this sort of thing, I've got to take things with me. So I've decided, personally, just speaking for myself, it's in my interest to take things that are lightweight, low bulk, go into a small pack, and are barely noticeable on my back. So when most people think of backpacking, they think of some, you know, great strapping guy with a massive, huge pack, you know, sort of stretching out in order, pots and pans clanging on the outside of it, big rolls of sleeping mats and sleeping bags and tents, all that sort of thing. With me, it's more like a little day sack, you know, just a day sack that goes on my back. Anyone who meets me thinks I'm out for the day. They don't think I'm out for 3 months. And it's just because I've made the decision, do you know what, if there's a choice between the heavy stuff and the light stuff, I'll get the light stuff. I'll tell you one thing though, if you end up with like a big wallet full of money like this, going for lightweight camping, you end up with a lightweight wallet as well. It's all gone. You know, so, you know, you won't get an easy ride with this. You'll have a lot of frustration finding stuff that doesn't quite work, trying to get something better, paying through the nose for it, you know, or finding someone else who's already going through this mill and say, well, I'll take that off you, you know, at a discount. You can build up your kit, you can chop and change, but you do have to put a lot of thought in, otherwise you will end up wasting a lot of time, wasting a lot of money, and basically, you know, it can get quite frustrating. So the idea is to talk to people who've already been there and done it. And I suppose, you know, you mentioned being president of the Backpackers Club. You turn up at one of their meets, they've been through the mill, they know what works. They have very strong opinions about this gear versus that gear. And just to turn up and plonk your tent next to theirs and say, well, how do you find these tents, this sleeping bag? I mean, what's that stove all about? They'll tell you straight, and then you've got information that you won't get from reading a catalogue or browsing a website. You're actually getting it from the person who's using it. But all I can say is I've done my level best to refine my kit from the age of 16, and I'm still working at it. I may never get there, but I'm, you know, like I say, I'll do my level best.
What do you think, when you were 16 and starting out, what was the biggest mistake that you made?
The biggest mistake was probably taking all the wrong gear. I mean, I didn't have the money to buy gear, so I had to beg, steal and borrow. Mostly borrow from my uncle Gerard. He gave me a sleeping bag, which the stench that came out of it, I had no idea what was going on, but I eventually turned the thing inside out and gave it a good shake. And the entire foot end was so mildewed, it just disintegrated and flew in all directions. And it was stuffed with kapok, which is not something you would normally think of stuffing a sleeping bag with. You know, hollow fibre, down, anything but kapok. It was just like an enormous sponge. But it almost looked as if he'd spent a few nights in it himself with muddy boots on. But he said, "Here, here's a sleeping bag, you'll be grand," you know. I honestly wish I'd been able to have a decent sleeping bag, a decent tent, decent footwear, decent everything. But like I say, I was carrying far too much. It was all the wrong gear. And it's only when, you know, I had the money to buy the gear that I could actually start and treat myself bit by bit to decent gear through the decades.
I suppose it is that middle ground, isn't it, between, you know, having the right gear that could be absolutely amazing, but it does cost. And I know that lightweight gear in particular can be really expensive. So, you know, how do you balance that?
You have to look at what it's intended for, first and foremost. So if you are going to go somewhere where you are going to end up camping in boulder fields in very exposed locations, freezing cold at night, hurricane winds, don't get a lightweight tent that needs a lot of secure pegging points. Get a proper expedition tent. It will break your back, but it will keep you alive. If you were doing a standard national trail in Britain in the summertime, it's not going to get too cold. It may get wet, but you'll survive. It'll be nicer the next day or the day after. You can get away with lightweight everything. So it's a case of saying, well, you know, I'm going to such a place, I need rock solid gear, or I'm going to such a place, lightweight gear will do it because I'm not expecting horrendous conditions or really desperately bad terrain underfoot. But you have to, you know, I mean, if I go to Iceland, I'll take 3 types of footwear. If I go anywhere in the UK, 1 type of footwear. And that's the difference. I'm going to a different place. I need to be able to walk through wet ground, stony ground, and over glaciers. I don't need to walk over glaciers in this country, not in summer. So I don't need glacier gear. I mean, I have a lightweight ice axe, but it still weighs 400 grams. I don't need that in summer in Britain, but I do need it if I go to Iceland in the summer, because at some point I'll be having great fun on a glacier, and just to have a lightweight ice axe will make all the difference there. So yeah, it's a case of getting the right gear for the right place, and sometimes that gear will not be lightweight. You know, you'll have to get something very heavy and durable if you're in an extreme location.
I suppose if you're tight on money, which is the thing that you think people should prioritize?
Well, that all depends. I mean, you have to ask yourself, do I want to be comfortable all day, but I don't mind roughing it at night, in which case you could skimp on the tent. Or if you said, I want a really desperately comfortable night, to recover from the rigours of the day, then you might skimp on your waterproofs and your footwear and put all your money into your tent. But at the end of the day, I think it's more a case of, if you do get interested in backpacking, get whatever gear you can, and then as you're using it, decide which things you need to refine personally. It might be your backpack. You might say, do you know, I'll get rid of the heavy backpack. I can get a lighter one and still get everything in. Or I can get rid of the heavy tent. I'm confident now that a lightweight tent will be good enough for me. You know, I can get rid of the big bulky sleeping bag and go for one that just keeps squashing down and down. It's called down for a reason. It goes right down. You know, just refine something one at a time. And if you say went online and said, oh, type in quality down sleeping bags, you'd be surprised at just how much they cost. But then again, there'll be somebody somewhere trying to get rid of a quality down sleeping bag because they've gone for something else, and you'll get it for half price, a third of the price. And so it's a case of, do you want it brand new? Will you accept second hand? And again, with something like the Backpackers Club, whenever they have a sizable meet, usually in the winter and the spring, they will end up with a table full of things for sale. Members offloading things, members buying things, and you can get some real bargains there. You know, it's like people who, they have opinions about the stuff they're getting rid of. I'm getting rid of it because, but you know, in all other respects, it's fantastic. Well, fine, you know, what are you asking for it? 50 quid, I'll give you 20, done. You can't beat it, you know, a bit of horse trading there over a tabletop.
Yeah, that's such a lovely sense of community as well.
Yeah.
In the backpacking. Yeah. I suppose, are you still refining your kit then? Are you still getting rid of stuff? Yes,
I mean, I'm okay where I am at the moment. When I had a hard think today, you know, is there anything right now that I would throw out in favour of something better? I can't actually think of anything, you know. I mean, the stuff I've got, like, you know, it's just like, I can pick these things up, tent, you know, I mean, I keep the poles separate because they don't fold down, you know, so tent poles, just over a kilo. And I'm thinking, can I really go less than that? I mean, you know, if I went to a tent that was like 500 grams, what am I going to lose? You know, probably a lot of, you know, stability and durability. So I'm fine where I am with that, you know. And things like sleeping bag, I said down, that's it when it's squashed in a bag and it still goes down, you know, fingers are almost touching, but that's going to protect me overnight, more or less everywhere I go. If I go somewhere really harsh in the depths of winter, I probably want to be wearing something inside this bag, but once it's out of the bag, it'll just keep growing. I will not give up the sleeping mat. Now that's inflatable, so it will go that thick. You can just get closed foam mats. That's fine if you like them, if you're comfortable with them. I want a bit more comfort and I'm willing to pay for it. But tent, sleeping bag and mattress, less than 2 kilos. So if you think about it, I have a day sack, I'm going out for a day's walk. If I suddenly think, well, I could spend the night out, 2 kilos and I'm covered. Tent, sleeping bag, mattress, and I'll be extremely comfortable. It gets more complicated if you start thinking about stoves and food for the night and which stove, which fuel and all this sort of thing. But again, I would have, in some instances, I'd have a choice between one and another. So I may go for the meth stove, it'll work off meths. So that's it, or have, believe it or not, a gas stove. Doesn't look like a gas stove, it's in a tiny bag.
Tiny, yeah.
When it comes out, it's all folded up. But if I wanted to take a gas stove, all I need is a cylinder to screw this on top of. And I'm in business for cooking because the whole thing just unwinds. All the prongs come out that the pan sits on top of. And then this thing just screws directly onto a cylinder. And there we go, one gas stove. And it would fit in your pocket and no one would even know you had a stove in your pocket. Whereas if you think of most people's camping stoves, you know they wouldn't go in the pocket. So
yeah, they're sizable things, aren't they?
Yeah. You know, I mean, things, and then again, if you don't like something that's on the market, you're perfectly entitled to make your own. There's a big trade, a big sort of interest in DIY gear. You know, people just want the raw materials and I'll make it myself. And I've done that sort of thing quite successfully. I've got one here. That's a standard, what they call a Titan kettle. It's a pot that you buy, but inside is a tea towel, and that tea towel covers an amazing contraption. It's the only one of its type in the entire world, and it's basically 2 sheets of crumpled up titanium foil which slot together, and one piece goes on top of the other. It's quite sturdy, it'll take a battering. And the pan, which it came in, which, you know, I mean, it's made to fit the pan goes inside. And I now have a pan fully protected by titanium foil, and then a drinks can burner, which you put the meths in. That sits on top of that. The meth heats up the pan. The heat doesn't escape because it's completely wrapped up in this concertina titanium foil, so all the heat goes into the pan, and we're up and running. So that's a DIY contraption. Now, one of the best meth stoves on the market would be a Trangia. That's the same principle, except the whole thing is lightweight. It wraps up, it goes inside the pan, and the entire thing weighs 200 grams.
Oh, Paddy, that's absolutely fantastic.
If you bought a Trangia and you had it packed up on the campsite, you could use it as a football. If you kick this around a campsite, it's trashed. So, you know, it's a great system. It works for me, but it's not as durable as just going out and buying something from the shop. So I've got the lightweight version. Yeah, everything I have, it's just 200 grams and I'm cooking. If I went heavyweight, you could kick it around the campsite as a football. It wouldn't come to any harm whatsoever.
Oh, brilliant. We've got a question from one of the viewers about do you know what brand the fold-up stove was?
Offhand, I don't know. I have it in my mind. It might be, it might have been made by Primus, or it might be that Primus makes something similar to it. I'm not good on brands, I'll be honest about that. You know, I mean, mostly to save weight, I will cut labels off things.
Yes.
And in terms of tents, you get washing instructions, fire hazard notices, you know, and all the manufacturer's details, how to wash and care for it. Slice all that off, you've just saved 14 grams. But you end up with a tent that you can no longer identify. So I'm not good on brands, but this isn't the only lightweight gas stove. You know, if you start looking for them, you'll find a dozen different sorts that fold up and just pop inside a tiny little bag.
I suppose this is another question, and it's kind of related to stoves. People are asking, how do you carry food for 7 days?
Right.
In your rucksack.
What you end up with when you've bought all your lightweight gear is your base weight. That's just your gear. That's what's going on your bike. Once you start adding food, and here we go, a week's supply of muesli, that's a kilo. You know, I mean, that is just like a 1 kilo weight, and that's going nowhere till you've eaten it. But the joy is, you know, after a week, it doesn't weigh anything. All you're left with is the wrapper. And of course, you won't dispose of that wrapper on the moorland. You'll take it down to a bin or you'll bring it home. But, you know, I mean, you do have to take food. If you're taking things like, you know, complete meals, you can go and buy an expensive, nutritionally balanced trekking meal, and they are fine. I've enjoyed them to the utmost. Or you could just go out and get a couple of little packets of noodles for 50p, you know, and they'll do the job. I mean, it won't be as good as a quality trekking thing, but it'll be 10 times cheaper. And, you know, just as effective as filling up your belly. When it comes to things like, you know, choice of tea, coffee, or whatever, you know, it's as simple as this: Yorkshire tea, Earl Grey, English breakfast, or ordinary coffee or decaffeinated coffee. You know, it's so simple. It's individual servings. You work out how much tea and coffee you're going to drink, pack exactly that amount. Don't take the whole coffee jar for a weekend. You know, but thinking about food is another process altogether, because what I eat isn't the same as what you eat or what anyone else eats. We've all got our favourites. We've all got our limits as to how long we're prepared to spend in a howling gale preparing something before we're too hungry to even eat it. So you learn through a process of just doing these things as to what works best for you. So by all means, you know, take a leg of ham and all that. And if it's not working for you, take something dehydrated that you just add water to. You know, it just goes on like that. You'll learn as you go along. But the other thing about food is, if you know that you are going to be reaching places on a daily basis where you can try quality local food, you'd be a fool not to try it. You know, that's especially the case abroad. You know, it's your chance to try something different. Why take noodles abroad? You know, if you have to take them, take them. But if there's going to be quality food halfway up the mountain every single day on the trail, then dig in and pay the price and enjoy it. You know, so there's the cultural experience when it comes to food. You know, why take our food over there when you can have their food and try something different? Or, you know, you balance that against, I'm going somewhere remote. I'm not going to get any sort of access to food for 10 days. Therefore, I need 10 days worth of food in my pack. And you'll probably work out that you're going to need at least 1 kilo in terms of dehydrated food to keep you well in, you know, full up and in good order for trekking per day. So a 10-day walk will be 10 kilos. So if your base weight was 6 kilos, you know, like I've done a good job on my lightweight packing, 6 kilos, but I'm going away for 10 days. Well, all of a sudden it's more like 16 kilos. But the joy is, on the 10th day, you're carrying 6 kilos and some crumpled up wrappers.
I suppose that's the importance of cutting out, you know, excess weight, isn't it? So that you have got the extra space for important things like food.
Yeah. I mean, the more you can make things low bulk, the smaller the pack is you need to carry. And if you make your food low bulk as well by going exclusively dehydrated and then taking on board local food wherever you can get it, then, you know, the amount of food you need is quite minimal. You can do some fantastic treks. I mean, if you think of some quality European treks like GR20 or GR5, GR20 is exceptionally tough. You don't want to be carrying 10 kilos of food on that, given that you probably get 1 or 2 options a day to buy quality food. And then the GR5, the number of huts in the middle of nowhere up a mountain doing 3-course meals. You know, why would you want to be sat there with dehydrated soup and noodles? You know, park yourself on the table and put your order in. And then, of course, you're carrying a day sack for a month. That's all you're doing. It's a day sack then. You're on a trek, it's a day sack. But even in the Alps, with all the mountain accommodation they have, I'll still take the tent, because you only need to get halfway up a mountain, the weather's looking a bit iffy, you knock on the door of the hut and the guardian says they're full. Not only are they full, they're over full. People are sleeping on the kitchen table tonight. Oh, it's all right, I've got a tent. Great, you're sorted. You know, there's always plenty of room outside wherever you are.
That maybe answers this next question from the viewers, but you might have a different answer. What is one piece of kit that has been your saviour on a trip? Was it that tent?
Oh, I think, well, in terms of it being a saviour, it's got to be the tent. You know, because when all's said and done, you know, if you've actually got that sort of 2 thin sheets between you and the elements, you can take the rough ground. You know, if you've inadvertently forgotten your sleeping bag or it blew away when you hung it up to air or whatever, and if you've just got the tent, that's your main safety feature. You can survive a lot with a tent. If you only had a sleeping bag and it was pouring with rain, you would probably not survive that. But then again, when it comes to survival, I think most people who, you know, have had good experience of sort of wild and mountainous terrain, almost everyone will tell you you should be able to survive 1 really bad night out. Second night, that's going to be a desperate struggle. Third night, you're probably losing it there. But 1 bad night is survivable. You know, if it rains, it snows, it hails, and it's dark and you can't do anything except sit there and jump up and down. When it gets light the next day, you can bail out, and you might be desperately unhappy, but at least you survived. 2 nights like that, and you'll be losing 50% of your people. You know? But yeah, the tent will save you a lot of trouble. That's your main thing, is your shelter. Anything else, you know, technically you don't need it. I mean, it'd be great if you had it, you know, I mean, it'd be great if you had the sleeping bag, the stove, the food. But if you've just got those two little sheets between you and the cold wind and the rain, then you're in a really good position there. So yeah, the tent can save you a lot of hassle. And as I've already said, you know, if everywhere's full, plenty of room outside. All you need is that little patch for your tent.
Yeah, kind of following up on, you know, awful trips and being stuck out in terrible weather. Another question from the viewers: what was your most memorably disastrous walk when you were hiking?
When I was 16 with all the wrong kit.
Yeah.
But it was a combination of, yeah, I had all the wrong kit. I was on part of the Pennine Way. My plan at the tender age of 16, I lived about 6 miles from the Pennine Way. So I thought, well, 6 miles, I'm on the Pennine Way, and then I'll follow it north. And then when I get far enough north, I'll cut off to the Lake District, climb a load of fells, come back through the Yorkshire Dales, and there you go, job done, you know. My summer holiday all used up from school. So I set off, and going up the Pennine Way I was doing okay. And then I got to Dufton. I made an early morning start, thinking climb onto Crossfell and then cut off for the Lake District, you know. So today's the day I leave the Pennine Way. And it was cloudy on top. And it wasn't that I, you know, was a bad navigator. It's just that I didn't navigate. You know, I went up Knockfell, and instead of turning left on top, I went straight over the back. And believe me, there's nothing on the back of Knockfell except chopped up peat bogs and the River Tees. And it's only when I find the River Tees, I thought, well, that's not Crossfell or the Dunfells, that's a river. So I waded across the River Tees thinking, well, I know I'm on the River Tees, I just have no idea which part of the River Tees I'm on. I found a track, I bailed out, it took me to Garrigill. I thought, oh, that's on the Pennine Way, but I'm on the wrong side of Crossfell. I need to be on the other side. Now, a sensible person would have pitched their tent at Garrigill, but I set off up Crossfell thinking I'll probably get to the summit, you know, but it turned into a hurricane. It poured with rain. I got to Greg's Hut, which is a mountain bothy, and to this day I cannot tell you why I didn't open the door, walk in and stay there for the night. But no, I carried on, and I came down from Crossfell into the Vale of Eden just as it was getting dark. Did I put the tent up? No, I walked right through the night to the Lake District, eventually got to Glenridding, 46 miles from Dufton. Then I put the tent up. The next morning, thinking I'll climb Helvellyn now, I woke up, unzipped the tent, and there were all these shell-shocked people walking around the campsite. And tents were in tatters. And they said, oh, what a storm that was, but I see your tent survived. And I'm like, storm? Because I was so wrecked after doing that 46 miles without sleep. I slept right through the storm that destroyed that campsite, and mine was the only tent that survived. It wasn't even a good tent, but it survived. But that was a whole day and a night of a complete disaster. But I learned from it, you know, like next time you're up Knockfell, turn left. Don't go straight on. You know, when it gets dark, stop. You know.
Oh, so, yeah, some brilliant advice, actually.
You can pick up a lot from terrible mistakes, and I'm glad I did it all when I was young. I think when I was 17, I went camping in the Lake District right through Christmas and New Year, and I got myself an ice axe from the climber's shop in Ambleside. I had no idea how to use it. I thought I'd pick it up as I go along, you know. But it's much better if somebody shows you how to use an ice axe. Don't just buy one and expect the knowledge will, you know, sort of somehow appear in your head. I think I nearly died 3 times in 10 days, being on icy slopes and not knowing what I was doing. But, you know, I mean, by the skin of my teeth, I survived. So between 16 and 17, I made the bulk of all the mistakes I've ever made in my life in terms of backpacking, and now I'm in the clear. You know, I'm not likely to make any more really desperately bad decisions from now on. that's the hope anyway. So
Yeah, I suppose you mentioned ice axes there.
yeah.
And we've got another question. Would you recommend using trekking poles?
Yes, because I've sometimes taken my trekking poles, and again, I've got lightweight trekking poles. These are black diamond ones in their own little bag. So they're not the trekking poles that extend. These ones actually fold up.
Oh, wow.
You've got to clip them together, and they only come in a certain length. So you decide whether you want short, medium, or long. So that's your decision you have to make before you even buy them. Every other trekking pole, you decide how long it's going to be. You know, to the absolute millimetre, you're in complete control. These are black diamonds, so they're very, very lightweight. So I don't mind carrying them, even if I end up walking for a month and never use them once. But the one occasion when I might use them, when it's steep and slippery and there's a big cliff edge in front of me, I'll be glad I was carrying them. You know, so what I'm doing there is I'm taking something that may be essential, but probably won't be, but when it is essential, I've got it, and I don't mind carrying it because it's so light. My trekking poles, I think, are 300 grams. Now, most people's trekking poles are made of some kind of metal alloy, and they'll probably come in at about 500 upwards. So mine are 300. I don't mind carrying 300 grams. It's like a small tub of margarine, you know, and if I need them, they're there, and if I don't mind.
I was wondering if we could move on to talking more about kind of camping and, you know, the realities of that for the summer.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it is looking different at the moment to what we'd usually expect.
Yeah.
So I suppose, when do you think that campsites and that sort of thing are going to reopen?
If you'd asked me that last week, I would have said, everybody's saying July the 4th. If you ask me now, nobody knows. You know, we just don't know. It would be great if it was July the 4th, you know, and I mean, a lot of people have been hoping it would be July the 4th, you know. All we need to be told is you can go camping now, and I'm not joking, half the houses in the country will be empty. People will just grab even their festival pop-up tents and they'll be off. The problem is going to be that, number one, we don't know. But I bet that when July the 4th comes, some people won't have got that message. And even if you can't go camping, they'll have gone anyway. But I've been told that some of the campsites that have been taking bookings for July have already cancelled those bookings because they don't know, and it's getting too close to the date. So that's a big problem. You know, the thing about this summer is there's still an enormous question mark hanging over whether we're going to be able to go anywhere. But if we are, it's going to be later rather than sooner. It's not going to be July the 4th, probably. It's probably going to be some time after. One of the problems is that some of the campsites have said they're prepared to open, and other campsites have said that they are not prepared to be to open. And the problem for the ones who, you know, haven't decided to open is that they feel they haven't been given enough information about whether it's safe to open. You know, they're asking questions like, is it safe for this campsite to have its shower block open? And nobody's speaking to them. They want the government to say your shower blocks are 100% safe if you do this, that, and the other. You know, at least they've got some guidance, but without guidance, they just, you know, they don't know what to do. So then they err on the side of caution and say, we're probably best if we don't do anything because we don't have the information. Now, even if it comes to the point where, yes, there's a date, and yes, it's safe to go and use the shower blocks, there's still the problem that there's social distancing being applied on campsites. You know, you may get 6 to 10 meters, which for my tiny little tent is brilliant. You know, I mean, there won't be anyone anywhere near me. Now, for those huge, big frame tents, they'll be quite close to each other because, you know, they'll go right up to their 10-meter boundary almost, and then they park the car next to it as well. So I would expect I'd turn up, yes, there's a space. I've got this huge, big 10-meter by 10-meter space of grass and my little tent in the middle of it, and nobody can come in. I'd love that. The reality will be when I get there, the rest of the world has beaten me to it because I'm just turning up on foot for one night. Everyone else booked weeks ago for a week. So and if half the campsites are closed, the other half are going to be full. So I do expect that, yes, there'll be a lot of people on the move thinking of camping because that's all they can do. And two, when they get to the campsite, there probably won't be any room for them. Now, that's when one person in a small tent going wild camping suddenly becomes very attractive. It's like, well, I'm all right. I mean, if I had a big frame tent, 5 kids and a car and 3 dogs, you're not going to go wild camping. You'll be spotted a mile away. But me in my tiny little green tent, tucked into a little hollow off the path with a little bush between me and anyone who could possibly see me, I'll be fine. So I mean, I wouldn't expect too much trouble for me personally, but that doesn't mean everyone's going to have an easy ride. I think it's going to be quite difficult to go camping this summer. So.
Do you have any advice for responsible wild camping? Because it is illegal without landowners permission.
Yeah. It's illegal. Not in the sense of like robbing a bank where you have to go to jail. It's illegal in that it's a civil offence. That's an important thing to remember. We have sort of 2 types of things being legal or illegal. There's the out and out crime, and then there's the civil offence. Now, with the civil offence, it's like if we were in a situation where, we had some sort of disagreement and it was a civil offence, it's up to you and me to talk it through and get it sorted out. And when you go wild camping without permission, you've just found a nice grassy patch behind the bushes and you put your tent there. If the landowner turns up, he has every right to ask you to move on. And your only response can be, yeah, I'm sorry, mate, roll up the tent and move on and go and wild camp somewhere else. You can't call the police. But then again, you can't dig your heels in and say, I'm not moving and I'm prepared to defend this with my fist. You can't do that. Then it becomes a crime, So it's a case of, it's one of those things where if you go and camp wild, you leave absolutely no trace. Nobody ever knew you were there. You kept quiet. You kept out of sight. When you left, the grass might be flat, but you fluffed it up again and said, there we go. Look at that. That's exactly how I found it. And you walk away. If the landowner comes 3 hours later, he has no idea anyone was there. Has a crime been committed? I doubt it. There is no crime, So it's a case of, if you are very, very responsible, if you really do stick to this absolutely no trace ethos, you're fine, And if you do get rumbled, if somebody does turn up and says, oh, out of here, the decent thing is just you pull all your pegs out, roll everything up in 5 minutes and say, I'm very sorry, and clear off. In half an hour, you'll find another place to camp, and it'll be a different landowner who doesn't see you. But yeah, it's one of these things, it's like, can I honestly, with my hand on my heart, tell people to go out and break the law? Of course I can't, but people are doing this all the time. And the bulk of them are doing it responsibly. And those who do it responsibly, you'll never even know they were doing it. But if you stand out like an eyesore, bright tent and big crowd of you, smashing bottles, having a bonfire, chopping somebody's trees down, scaring all the cattle all night with raucous music, that's not wild camping. That's just wild people going camping. That's completely different.
Yeah, I think that's really good that you've said that, because it is probably going to be the reality of the summer, isn't it? That might be cool.
If you can't get on a campsite and it's just you in a small tent or 2 people in a small tent, I think you'll find somewhere to sneak away and just bed down for the night, but it is going to be difficult for a lot of people driving around looking for campsites, and they're all going to be full, and the ones that aren't full are actually closed. That's going to be, I think, awkward this year. The only thing that would save it is if you absolutely threw it down for the whole summer, and then people don't want to go camping. Who wants to go camping when there's not a glimmer of sunshine on the weather forecast? But
I imagine you'd be out there though, Paddy.
Well, like I said, you can survive it. And, even when it is raining desperately hard and you're completely soaked, and you've had to pack your tent up in the pouring rain as well. And, if you do your level best, I'm not going to get the sleeping bag wet, but some part of it gets wet, and then it just sort of, the whole thing is slightly damp. By the time you've packed all that away and the water's seeping through it and dribbling out the bottom of the pack and down your legs, and you're thinking, oh, this is absolute misery, you know, why do I do this? At some point it will clear up. And certainly, as far as I'm concerned, the moment there's a nice dry breeze and the sun pops out, I'll just stop. It doesn't matter where I am. I'll tip everything out. I'll give it all a good shake. If there's a fence wire there, not barbed wire, but any other fence, I'll drape everything on it, dry it out. You know, I'll take half an hour to an hour off my walking time to get all that stuff dry, because later on it could be pouring with rain, but at least I'm going to get pitch dry. You know, I'm not going. The worst thing of all is setting off and things are wet, and then having to put everything up wet in the evening and crawl into a wet sleeping bag. If you've done it once, you'll learn the tricks. Never do it again. You know, I'll tell you, one of the hardest things to do is if you've got wet clothes and the only way you can dry them is inside your tent. It's possible, but it's not pleasant. It usually entails wearing wet clothes inside a sleeping bag, and by the time it's like 5:30 in the morning, they're reasonably dry. You know, they're just sort of, you know, a little bit damp. But then, you know, to sleep all night in damp clothes in the hope that they'll dry, usually the moment you're packing up and walking, they're wet again. So, you know, you think it's not worth the effort. But then again, if you do get indoors, you can do tremendous things indoors in terms of drying things out. You know, if it's a hostel, a hotel, a B&B, hijack whatever works to get your stuff dry.
Paddy, we've got quite a few questions from the viewers, so if we do a kind of quick fire run through of those. So I suppose related to camping, can you camp on the southwest coast path without going too far off the route?
Well, there are campsites in some places that actually come right down to the coast path, you know, in that as you're following the path there are tents next to you. And then there are others that you see a little bit inland, but then there are others in little hollows that you can't see at all. You know, you'd need to be looking at your map, or, you know, do a big search on the internet to find out where all these other places are and then go for them. In terms of wild camping, and this has happened to me, there are parts of the southwest coast path where you think, oh, lovely bit of grass, you know, and it's late enough in the evening that no one else is coming, so I'll camp on this wonderful headland. I'll watch that lighthouse out there until I'm tired. I'll go to bed, I'll wake up, the lighthouse will still be there, I'll pack up, I'll move on. No one ever knew I was there. And the moment you're off the headland, you see a sign, and this happened to me, National Trust sign, bylaws on the back, inviting the public to grass on anyone who was wild camping.
Oh gosh.
And I thought, I never thought I would see that in print, you know. But then at some other point, I think maybe a week later, I was somewhere between St Ives and Land's End. I'd had a wild camp. I'd packed up and everything was damp with very heavy condensation. And halfway through the day, when I had the breeze and the sunshine, I flapped everything out and, you know, made great inroads to getting things dry, when a woman and her little boy came down the path, and the boy said, oh, look, that man's got a tent. Wouldn't it be wonderful to camp here? Do you know what the mother did? Clouted him round the ear and said, it's forbidden to camp, you naughty, naughty boy. Poor kid was in tears, and I couldn't help thinking it was all my fault. I hadn't actually camped there. I was only drying my stuff, but it provoked that reaction from a member of the public. And I thought, well, that's him put off wild camping for life.
Yeah, he'll be going to the campsites, won't he? Other questions, Paddy. What insect repellent would you recommend for backpacking? Going back to kit.
Something that doesn't burn your skin off or give you cancer, and there's not many things left after you've done that. I have tried and failed with insect repellents, and quite honestly, you know, this is lightweight, it's only a few grams, it's a midge net, and it goes in its own little bag, you know, put that on your head over your hat and you'll get some clearance. Put gloves on, long sleeves, you know. It's all you can do to be absolutely sure that you're not going to get attacked by midges, because come the summer, come the ideal pitch, you know, where you're sheltered from the breeze, that's where the midges will congregate as well. It's sad to say.
Oh, they're absolutely awful, aren't they?
You need a bit of a breeze, and it's usually just enough of a breeze that it's starting to get unpleasant for camping, but that will keep the midges away. In terms of repellents, there are so many on the market, and I would say try them all, you know, see which one works. They come in all different forms, you know. There are bottles where you dribble it on you, and the others where you actually apply it to fabrics. There are some that you apply to fabrics, and if it's the wrong fabric, it will melt them, and would even melt polycarbonate, you know, spectacle lenses. So you have to be very careful, read the directions. Some of them will tell you what horrific effects it will have if it's used improperly. Others are so mild, you wonder whether they're actually attracting the midges, you know, that they actually smell something and come towards you because of it. But the ones that people have sworn by for many, many years, or anything that includes citronella, you know, for some reason, citronella always comes up. In terms of things which have been specifically manufactured to keep midges clear, DEET comes up a lot, but DEET is scary to use if used inappropriately. You know, like if you rub it all over your face and then it dribbles into your eyes, good grief, your eyes will feel like they're on fire, and it's very bad for them. And if you don't have copious amounts of water to wash your eyes out, then you really are going to suffer with
that's awful.
happening. So,
Yeah.
you know, be careful with them. There are things that work, but, you know, they're unpleasant to use as well. But the best thing is just put a physical barrier, a midge net, gloves, long sleeves. That can be absolute torture in hot, humid conditions, but, you know, that's sometimes what's required. And then once you zip yourself in your tent, try not to go out, you know, because they're all waiting for you to do that.
Another couple of questions about kit. Can you take trekking poles in hand luggage?
Oh, it varies from airline to airline.
Yeah.
Now, one of the best ones I've come across is an old guy. He writes about the outdoors, and he said that he got trekking poles that look like walking sticks, and he hobbles onto the aircraft with them.
That's one way of doing it, isn't it?
Now, you won't get away with that if you're in your 20s or your 30s, you know. You need to be 60s or 70s to pull that one off. And you've got to have some goal to do it as well. But yeah, it varies. And there's a woman who lives down the road from me in this town. She went to do the Camino de Santiago. It took her 3 flights to get there and 2 flights to get back. The 3 flights out, she had the trekking poles wrapped in cling film, sellotaped up, and nobody bothered. And then when she got to Santiago, she got some cling film and some tape, and she wrapped them up again to come back. First flight, no problem. The very last flight, confiscated.
Oh no.
At least she'd done the trek. If that had happened on the way
very
out,
true.
it's either no trekking poles or go and buy some more. So sometimes it's a case of, you know, you're either going to take a chance, and if it all goes wrong, you end up buying a pair of cheap trekking poles. And if it goes right, well, you know, you've beaten the system, sort of thing. But they do worry about things like that. I have had this happened to me. This is a titanium tent peg, and I went to Corsica. No problem getting my tent in as hand luggage. They weren't bothered about the poles for the tent. I didn't take trekking poles, but I did have these titanium tent pegs, and no problem getting to Corsica. Coming back, they nearly didn't let me out of Corsica. My bag went through the x-ray, they pulled me over, they made me tip everything out, and then they started looking at the end of the peg. And I said, look, I've deliberately blunted them. It's like, there's no blood, you know. I mean, and they reluctantly let me take the pegs home. But these things are titanium, you know, they're £2 each, and I've got 20 of them. It's not just heartbroken, it's the thought of all that waste of money. And they probably, you know, will go and give their mates the tent pegs, you know, they don't bin them.
Yeah. Paddy, we've only got
careful,
we've only got a few minutes left,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So I just thought I'd ask you about some of the, you know, you've walked all the UK national trails. We've got a question: if you had just one trail to rework, which would it be?
I think I'd always go for the Pennine Way because, like, I've grown up with that one. You know, like I said, I used to live 6 miles off it, and it was created when I was 7 years old. And I think I heard about it from that time. People in my family went and walked it. And, you know, it was just one of those things. At some point, you had to walk the Pennine Way. People would actually, in the old days, when I was a teenager, if you were walking on your own, people would chat to you, and they'd often say, are you just walking for pleasure, or are you walking the Pennine Way? You know, if you were on the Pennine Way, as if, you know, like you could walk the Pennine Way, but it certainly wasn't for pleasure, you know. And then other people would say to you, oh, are you a serious walker? And you'd say, oh, yes, you know, I know I'm only like 17, 18, I'm a serious walker though. And they say, but have you walked the Pennine Way? And everything hinged on the yes or no. If you said yes, then, oh, a serious walker. And if you said no, just an amateur, you know. But it's a great trail. It's not the same as it was in the 70s when I first walked it. It was it was absolutely been trodden to death. It's been repaired, and so as far as conditions underfoot, it's not the same trail, but the scenery is the same, the places are the same, and I've always enjoyed it, and I think I always will. So out of all the national trails, if I had to put one at the top, it would be Pennine Way.
So is that the one that you think you're going to walk first after lockdown then?
Unfortunately, when I look at the guidebook work that's been piling up that I have to deal with at some point, it's looking increasingly like I'm going to have to go to the southwest of England, as is the rest of the country. So, you know, that's probably where I will end up in the summer if I get to go at all. But when I get there, I'm not expecting, you know, great sort of long stretches of countryside with just me in it. I think the rest of the world will be down there, and I'll just have to squash my way through. So yeah, it's still a great trail, you know. Southwest Coast Path, I love it, but I'm also, I think the Isles of Scilly are still up for like a bit of extra work. So if I walk the Southwest Coast to Penzance, got the ferry to the Isles of Scilly, I can do 2 at once. If I finish in Poole, Jersey is another one that's been mentioned. I could get the ferry to Jersey and do that, you know, but it all depends. You know, like the later I get to start in the summer, the less I can do before the weather's just horrible and you can't take decent pictures, and, you know, it's too stormy to go to the Channel Islands or whatever. So I just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I suppose like all of us, you know, we're just waiting and seeing, aren't we, to see what we can do.
Yes, nice, well, if someone would give us some information.
Yeah, but I suppose now we know exactly what we need to take if we do set off backpacking this summer. So yes, thank you, Paddy. This has been absolutely wonderful. I'm going to pass back to Hannah now. Yes, there you go.
Yeah, thank you guys both so much. That was really, really interesting. We had so many questions that we didn't get round to answering. We should have known, really, with Paddy's propensity to talk, that we maybe should have done an hour and a half. But if anyone has got any questions that we didn't get a chance to put to Paddy, you can always send them to us, and he's happy to answer questions at any time. So that's totally open for the future. Next week, if you'd like to join us again, we've got Sandy Brown. We'll be talking to Dave Whitson about the Camino del Norte. And then the week after that, we've got another Camino special. So if you'd like to find more about these events, please sign up to our newsletter or look on our website, join the Facebook group, wherever you prefer. We'll put information everywhere. We will, as I said before, we will put this video on YouTube after the event, and we'll put it on our website, and it will be available on Facebook as well. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Paddy. And thank you all for joining us. And we'll see you next time.